Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now, this is a retro review and I haven't done one of these for a while and I feel really bad about it. Partly there's been no subject matter, to be honest, which is a shame because these are the ones I really enjoy doing. These are the music ones, which I also haven't done for a while, and I need to get on and do some more of those. The reason for this one is I've actually been gifted a Cyrus 3, very kindly gifted actually. It doesn't work. It's broken in many ways, and I'll talk about that in a while. But before you talk about Cyrus, you kind of need to talk about Mission. And I don't know whether people are aware, but Cyrus kind of was the electronics arm, or later on was the electronics arm of Mission. In the early days, I mean, when Mission were really flying high, sort of end of the 70s, early 80s, before they sort of got into the sort of marketing first way of doing things, which kind of almost killed them eventually. And I'll mention that to Kev and BMW because you're going to go the same way if you're not careful. Around that time, they sort of experimented with electronics, and they had made for them. There was a big pre-power amplifier, which it was a bizarre looking thing. It looked like it had been hewn out of a massive piece of metal. There was a preamp and a power amp, and the front panel on both had the words Mission deeply embossed into it, at full width, finished in like a hammerite grey, sort of dappled finish. The volume control and selector switch within the M of Mission. Really good, apparently. I mean, I never actually heard one. I saw them, but all the ones I saw weren't working. And I think it was designed by Stan Curtis. Now, Stan Curtis was a genius engineer, sadly gone now, actually, Stan, who was the founder of Cambridge Audio, the original Cambridge Audio, not the rebranded Cambridge Audio of today, which was just basically a company that bought a retail outlet that bought the name and then had their own equipment made. The original Cambridge Audio was a very specialist, really good but unreliable equipment, all designed and built by Stan Curtis. And I'm pretty sure the pre-power was. Mission also made a little shoebox style amplifier, which was kind of the rage then, if you think about things like the name Nate and Nitec and things like that. There was quite a few little shoebox ones. And they did an amplifier called the 778, which may or may not have been Stan Curtis, I can't remember now. It was very good, but it was very bright as well. And it didn't really match, weirdly, Mission speakers very well. It was a little bit too aggressive. But it did have a few things going for it. And I think on the basis of that, Farid Azima, who was the owner, who you'll have noticed has a bit of an obsession with the number 7. All the equipment was either, I think like 70s, 77s, 770s, 737s. All the reps cars that used to come to up to the shop from the factory all had the number 7 in the registration plate. Yeah, it's just one of those slightly there's lots of very quirky people in hi-fi, and that was quite a good one. He decided that he'd split the two bits together and would have Cyrus would be the electronics brand, and then Mission would be the loudspeakers. He wouldn't try and mingle the two because I think it was a clever thing to do actually, because I think if you're known for making loudspeakers, people aren't going to take any electronics seriously. However good they were, there was the Mission DAD 7000 CD player, and that was really good. Weirdly, not very reliable, but yeah, that was really good. So there was a decision made to split the two things in two, create another brand. It was launched, Cyrus was launched because I went to the launch, Monkey Island Hotel in Jersey in about 80, whenever it was, 87? That's just a complete wild guess. It would be around mid to late 80s anyway. And the first product was a Cyrus 1, a little plastic cased, shoebox style, looked a bit like a 778 but built to a budget really. Because the 778 was a very chunky, heavy amplifier, the Cyrus 1 was kind of felt like a little bit of a sort of a budget version of that really. Very good. I mean, it sounded superb. You could argue it was, again, possibly a bit bright, a bit aggressive, but it would make sort of fairly budget systems sound really good, sort of giving them a life and a bounce to the sound, a dynamicism that you weren't really sort of getting with the competition. Probably not as subtle or as refined or as detailed as some, but it just had this attack that nothing else had really. So it did very well in the press. I mean, the latest RS2 also did very well as well. So it was, everything looked great. It was going to be, when I heard it at Jersey, I thought we're going to do loads of these. It's going to be amazing. And ultimately we did, but the main problem with the Cyrus 1, Cyrus 2 was that they were really, really unreliable, particularly the one. I mean, I've never had a product before that we actually kept spares in. For brand new amplifiers, we keep full circuit boards, a few other bits, for when it blew up. Not for if it blew up or whatever, you know. I think it was something like 3 out of 4 would blow, would die within the first week. It was horrendous, and it made me realise the power of the press actually, because it got such good reviews that people would buy it even so. Because obviously the press weren't talking about the reliability. It was just some guy in a shop saying, "Don't buy this; it's going to blow up." But they buy it anyway, and then come back the next day with a smoking box saying, "It's not working." Well, we did say. But anyway, yes, but bit by bit, it sort of got better. I mean, there was a bit of an insider joke at the time, because I think it was the time of the Falklands War, and Mission had made a big play that the Cyruses were made out of military-grade components. I think I've said this before on video actually. But the joke, the internal joke was that they were perhaps made of old Exocet parts because they all seemed to blow up, which is really unfair. But it made us laugh at the time, I suppose. I don't know. You had to be there, I suppose. After a while, they sort of created sort of version 2 of the Cyrus 1 and 2, where they went to like a metal chassis and metal casework, and they did improve quite a bit actually. They sort of helped things along, but they were still not a reliable amplifier. And after a while, those 2 models were dropped and replaced by, and we're coming to it now, the Cyrus 3. Now the Cyrus 3, I think, was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to the fact that they were having so many problems with the 1s and the 2s. And I know people will be probably putting comments now saying, "I've got an original Cyrus 1, it's never failed." Yeah, they seem to do that. If they worked past the first few months, they seem to last forever, but most of them didn't. Most of them would have major failures. Anyway, Cyrus 3. Cyrus 3 I think, was sort of designed to try and counter all these problems they were having. The amount of protection circuit on this, it's a soft start, it constantly monitors itself. If you go, just reading through the manual, I found the manual online for it, and there's a full page of error codes that the lights on the front will flash green for this, red for that, orange for this, so many flashes for something else. It was massively protected, more than anything else at the time. The amount of technology in it, just to protect itself, is just crazy. The slight drawback is it sounded terrible. By comparison, it lost that dynamic, it lost that sort of excitement in the sound. It was possibly a bit more refined. I think because the 1 and the 2, I think the responses of them were a little bit uneven. It was almost sort of, you perhaps think the saxophones on this amplifier sound wonderful, but it was almost as though there was a bit of a peak in the response that made certain instruments come out. But you'd realise the saxophone sounded great, but that cello seems to have disappeared into the background now. They were a bit strange, but very overall you forgave them because they were very good. The 3, it just sounded flat. It sounded uninteresting. It was kind of killed the whole thing really, and it wasn't very reliable anyway. The problems that came up were to do with the protection circuits, so it kind of didn't solve any problems really. It was and I don't think Cyrus ever really recovered after that. And I know there are people out there who love the Cyrus kit, and you can buy these big stacks of Cyrus, and it looks fabulous. I've never liked it. Whether or not it's sort of me got this sort of gripe because of the Cyrus 3 and what a backstep it was over the 1 and the 2, I don't know. When it's not awful, this is me as a hi-fi person, sort of probably being used to the 1 and the 2, and then the fact that wasn't as good was a bit of a shock really. But I felt as though it was quite a big backstep. I think I've sort of just got this anti-Cyrus thing now. A little bit. I was talking to a customer the other day about my dad, who would never buy a Vauxhall car, which is Opel in Europe, because in 1961 a friend of his bought a Vauxhall Cresta and the back window rusted out in the first 12 months on a brand new car, and he vowed never to buy Vauxhall again. It's a bit like me with Cyrus, sort of. I don't like Cyrus because of the Cyrus 3, but I don't know. What I'll do, I'll put it on over there, and we'll have a look at features and how it's all put together. It's quite clever. I must admit, the whole concept of it is very clever. And there's a few things come over from the Cyrus 2, like you can add power supplies to it. Various features. It's got like a sort of bus system, so you can link all Cyrus products together, and they'll all talk to each other, so the remotes all work together, so all switches off together. But yeah, like I said, I'll put it across here. Let's get it all plugged in, and we'll have a look. Like I say, this is very broken. I think it will power up. That's about all it does, actually. But anyway, I'll move the camera. Let's have a look. Okay, so Cyrus 3. On off switch, there's little mute, balance, phono stage, CD input, tuner input. I think that'll be video, auxiliary, and tape loop on there, and a little stepped type attenuator thing on there. Like I said, the whole front end of these is logic controlled, and I think a lot of the problems it had, this has got pretty much a major logic thing going on with it. Also, I think either the main caps have gone, or possibly the output transistor, so it's in a very poorly state, really. When you switch it on, it's interesting, talking about having loads of protection. It does a self-test when it switches on. Interestingly, it doesn't seem to know it's faulty. But if I switch on at the back, you see it does a complete, and it's supposed to flash if there's an error. Like I said, there's at least 2 faults with this at the moment. It's not it kind of works. It distorts like crazy. It cracks and bangs and whatever if you touch anything, which I've had before on these, and it was to do with the logic front end. But anyway, I'm not worth fixing, really, unfortunately. I know there's people out there will probably be shouting at me saying you, but there's too much wrong with it, really. So it's in standby, switch on, goes into the last input. Volume control is very much like some of the later Riga stuff. The volume control just keeps on turning and keeps on turning, and you follow it round on the. It's coming off on that. I mean, actually, spec-wise, it's pretty good. I mean, it's I think they were rated about 50 watts, you get into 8 ohms, and it's increasing up to about 17 to 4. So it's got decent driving ability. I'm probably being a bit harsh with it, to be fair, but I think it was just, like I say, it was just a disappointing amp after the 1 and the 2. And at the time, there was other things out there which were sort of similar money that were kind of better, really. You know, there was still the Name Nate was out there. There was still various things, really. I think Greek 4040s and various things that were still around, and better amps, really, just simpler. And I think it was killed by all this excessive protection. Ironically, I suppose, but yeah, I don't know. Never got on with it, really. Never got on with it. Anyway, let's have. It's not like me to be down on things. I don't tend to have things I really don't like, but this kind of is one of them, really. So have a look at the back panel. Try and keep upbeat. The back panel is sort of what it sort of shows is, I haven't really thought about this before. It seems to be a twin mono design. Got separate heat sinks either side, speaker inputs. So I'm guessing, I haven't actually opened one of these up for a long time. It's probably dual, it's probably monoed inside, which is a good thing. Lots of inputs, like I say, phono. I can't read this in the dark. That isn't phono, is it? That's pre, I haven't got my glasses on. I think that's pre-out, pre-in possibly. And then we've got the range of inputs. There's one called a MC bus, I think. Yeah, MC bus. That's the little link. So you sort of go out of one and into another, whatever, then come back into here. So you sort of loop it around, and everything controls everything else. That's your little socket for the external power supply, the PSX. Used to be with the old Cyrus 2. it was 50-50 when you plugged a PSX in as to whether it would either work or blow up. And the very early ones. Later on, they got it sussed somehow. I never worked out what was going on there, really. But had some serious issues with PSXs in the early days. And off on the back, the idea being that you'd leave it in standby. That was something that came in a lot with amplifiers then, that the idea to leave... I mean, it's completely valid to leave amplifiers on, as long as you don't mind, using the power. But this would switch into standby, have everything energised up so it's still sort of warmed up, ready to go, really. What else have we got? Little ground for the record player. Little 2-pin, it's quite common on amplifiers, little 2-pin IEC, works with a 2 or a 3. But yeah, sorry, I'm just trying not to sound too sort of downbeat with it, really. But I mean, around that time, there was other amplifiers that I wasn't that particularly into. I didn't really like the Audiolab 8000A. I didn't really like the Linn Intec. I actually bought one just on the basis of the actual sort of hype that went before it, and it's supposed to be the worst thing I've ever bought. So it isn't just this I don't like. There's a few other things out there that disappointed me, really. But yeah, let's turn the camera around. Yeah, so Syrus 3. Not something I really like very much, and I'm sure there's people out there still using them. And funnily enough, the chap who owned this before was really happy with it. I think it's probably just from my point of view, because I've sort of experienced the previous and other things at the time, that it's sort of the peer group sort of amplifiers of that period, that it was just so disappointing. Really, just felt as though they could have done so much more with it. Really, rather than trying to fix it by adding technology. Perhaps if they just tried to make it more reliable but kept it pure, it would have been a much better amplifier, really. But perhaps they learned the lesson. I don't know. I don't think Syrus has ever really recovered after that. I don't think the latest stuff was ever that great, really. There's been the odd items that they've done. I think the recent Syrus 1 is actually very good. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there before I dig a hole. Thanks for the subscribes and the likes. I'm trying to think what I'm going to do next, really. I haven't actually got anything planned at the moment. I'm just going to see what comes up. Getting quite close to Christmas now, so it's actually getting quite busy in the shop. We've got complete chaos with the postal service and couriers. Couriers can't handle things because the postal service isn't doing anything. It's all madness at the moment. So I might do a little video on that, actually, funnily enough, about availability and what we can and can't get. So, but anyway, I might do that tomorrow. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in a future video. Sorry, this is, like I say, sorry this was so downbeat, but got to be straight, really, haven't you? Got to be straight. I'll see you soon. Thank you.